I showed up late. Again. The quarterly celebration was already in full swing by the time I parked in the underground garage and took the elevator to the rooftop of the new center downtown. I'd promised Emily I wouldn't stay late at the office, but, well, one last meeting turned into two, and two turned into me rewriting half a report for a client who thought bullet points were beneath them. By the time I arrived, the sun had dipped halfway below the Austin skyline, casting everything in that kind of golden hour glow people obsess over in photos. I adjusted my blazer, stepped out of the elevator, and tried to look like I hadn't just sprinted across 3 city blocks and silently cursed my entire workload. Music drifted from the speakers set up along the terrace railings. Glasses clinked. People mingled near heat lamps and long tables covered in catered bites that looked way more expensive than they tasted. I scanned the crowd for her, and then I saw them. Emily was already there, seated on one of the cushioned benches tucked into the corner of the rooftop, half shaded by tall planters and those string lights that made everything look a little too magical. She was laughing at something Liam said, the company's creative director. Tall, slick, a little too casual about boundaries for my taste. I'd never said anything about him before, not really. I didn't want to be that guy, the possessive husband, the insecure one, but something about the way he sat, shoulder angled toward her, body language open and claiming. It rubbed me raw. She leaned in slightly. He mirrored her. Whatever they were talking about, it was theirs. I started toward them, slowly, still trying to decide whether I was imagining things. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe the stress of work was bleeding into everything else. I didn't want to assume the worst until it fell. Emily reached down to grab her purse. A simple movement, nothing dramatic, and something slid out of the open zipper pocket. It hit the ground with a soft tap against the concrete floor, just a slip of white plastic with black print. It was a hotel keycard, Beacon Point Hotel, dated for that same evening. For a second, no one moved. Time seemed to bend, just a little. I saw her eyes track the card. Liam saw it too. And then, like it was the most natural thing in the world, he leaned forward and picked it up. No reaction, no surprise. He just glanced at it, gave a faint smile, and slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket. Like it was his, like it was meant to be there. My feet stopped moving, like my body had instinctively thrown on the brakes. The sound of chatter and background music kept going around me, but all I could hear was blood rushing in my ears. I stood maybe 30 feet away, not close enough to hear what they were saying, but too close to pretend I hadn't seen exactly what I saw. They didn't look over. They didn't flinch. Emily tucked her hair behind her ear and kept talking like nothing happened. I swallowed hard. My mouth had gone dry. I couldn't decide whether to walk straight up to them or turn around and pretend I'd just arrived and seen nothing at all. Neither felt right. Neither felt remotely satisfying. I ended up doing the worst thing. I froze. Maybe 30 seconds passed. Maybe more. Eventually, Liam stood and offered a brief wave to someone by the drink table, and Emily turned her head. That's when she saw me, and she smiled. That familiar, practiced, effortless smile. The one I'd seen at dozens of dinners, weddings, client events. Charming without trying, perfectly warm, like nothing in the world could be wrong. "Hey, babe," she called out, weaving her way toward me. "You made it." She wrapped her arms around me, pulled me in like we were the happiest couple at the party. Her perfume, something different, subtle, probably new, filled my nose. Her hand lingered against the back of my neck. She kissed me on the cheek, fast. "You're late," she said lightly, then added, "Busy day?" I nodded. Couldn't really say much. My brain hadn't caught up to my face yet. Then, and this was the part that made my stomach twist, she brought up the card immediately, like she'd been preparing for it. "Oh my God," she laughed, pulling back slightly. "You'll love this." So, I was helping prep a few things for the marketing team earlier, and we had these mock-up kits for a hospitality client. Beacon Point, super cheesy props, room keys, travel itineraries, that kind of thing. One of them must have slipped into my bag because I noticed it earlier and meant to toss it. But of course, it fell out right in front of Liam, and he made such a thing of it. She rolled her eyes playfully. He joked that I was secretly planning a spa escape. It was flawless. Natural. Too natural. She delivered it so smoothly, so early, that it threw me off balance. She'd predicted it. She'd anticipated the question before it even formed. And that's what made it feel wrong. You know how when someone's telling the truth, their story builds from the moment. They connect the dots as they go, maybe fumble a little, let you ask questions. But when someone lies, really lies, it's like they jump straight to the explanation. Overcompensate with detail. Beat you to your own doubt before it can land. That's what this was. I nodded along, smiled even. What else could I do? Call her out in front of our co-workers? Ask why Liam pocketed the card like it belonged to him? Demand to know if the presentation prop included dinner reservations for 2 and a room with a view? No, that wasn't the time. It wasn't the place. So I played along. Sounds like Liam, I said, forcing a laugh that barely sounded like me. She relaxed against me, slipped her arm around my waist and leaned in to whisper, "Don't disappear tonight, okay? I want to catch up properly." I just nodded. But even as she turned to wave at a coworker and pull me toward the drinks table, my thoughts were no longer in the moment. They were racing backward, replaying, rewinding. The way Liam had picked up that card like it was nothing. The way she had smiled at him. Not nervously, not guiltily, but fondly. The timing of her explanation. The anticipation of suspicion. A chill crept down my spine, even in the warmth of the rooftop air. It wasn't what she said that stuck with me. It was how prepared she was to say it. And that's when I realized this wasn't the beginning. It was the first time I noticed, but not the first time it had happened. I couldn't stop replaying that moment in my head. The keycard. The way Liam picked it up like it was no big deal. The way Emily gave me an explanation before I even asked. And how convincing she was, how natural it all sounded. Like she had rehearsed it, word for word, in her head. And maybe she had. It's funny how your brain works after something like that. Before that rooftop party, I might have brushed off certain things as quirks, coincidences, bad timing. But once suspicion takes root, everything starts to look different. The past stops feeling settled. Things I'd filed away as normal little lapses, shifts in routine, changes in behavior, started to look like red flags I'd been too blind to notice. And suddenly, I couldn't not notice, like how Emily had gotten real weird about her phone lately. At first, it was subtle. She started keeping it face down during dinner, said the screen was distracting. Then it started living on silent. She claimed she was tired of all the dings from group chats, and I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But then, it started coming with her everywhere. And I don't mean normal everywhere. I mean everywhere. Bathroom, laundry room, garage. Even when we were watching something on the couch, she'd pull a throw blanket over herself, then subtly shift to check her phone underneath it. Once, I caught the glow of the screen lighting up her face after midnight. She said she was just scrolling through Pinterest. I didn't push. Now I was kicking myself for not pushing. Her schedule had changed too. She used to work from home most days. Now, she was getting more client meetings. A term that conveniently explained her sudden absences at weird hours. And they weren't just weekday meetings. Saturdays and Sundays started filling up with quick check-ins and emergency briefings. Once, she left during breakfast saying a vendor forgot to ship samples, and she had to go pick them up herself. She came back 3 hours later with a single plastic bag and a story that didn't really match the timeline. I let it slide, but I remembered. Then there were the perfumes. It started when she brought home a new fragrance and told me it was a free sample from a work campaign. Limited edition, she said, spritzing it into the air. Tell me if it smells like too much. Didn't. It actually smelled amazing. And I told her that. So she wore it the next day. And the next. Then, just when I got used to it, a different scent took its place. Trying a new one, she said casually. That became a thing. One week it was floral, the next it was musky, then citrus. I asked her about it once, and she laughed and said, "We're testing responses for a potential ad. I want to see what people notice." I chalked it up to marketing weirdness. But now, I couldn't help wondering if it had nothing to do with campaigns, and everything to do with covering someone else's cologne. She also stopped coming home tired. That was maybe the strangest thing. Emily used to collapse on the couch after long days, hair in a bun, sweatpants, blanket, mindless TV. But lately, she came home smiling, radiant even, like she'd just come from something exciting. Some nights, she walked in still dressed up, full makeup, curled hair, new earrings I'd never seen before. They were giving out samples at the studio, she'd say, or, I stopped by that new boutique on 6th. I didn't think much of it. Not until the pieces started forming a pattern. It wasn't just what changed. It was how often. She had become curated. Like a version of herself someone else was influencing. Someone who complimented a new bracelet, recommended a new scent, noticed the way she wore her hair. Someone who paid attention in ways I hadn't, maybe, or maybe just in ways she craved. Then came the vanishing ex. We used to spend Saturday mornings together. Coffee, waffles, random YouTube videos, and usually a grocery run by noon. It was our quiet ritual, one of the few constants in our week. But at some point, those mornings got hijacked. She started waking up early and saying she had to run a quick errand downtown, or grab something from the supplier before they closed. I'd offer to come, and she'd always respond the same way. It'll be boring. Just save the good coffee for when I get back. First, I shrugged it off. Then I started noticing she never came back with much. A single bag, sometimes nothing, and always that same vague smile. One time, she even forgot to bring the groceries she said she went to get. I asked where they were, and she acted surprised. Like the lie had been so automatic she'd forgotten to carry it through. That's when I started checking the car. I remembered that our vehicle's infotainment system synced GPS data with my phone's app. It wasn't something we ever used, just a feature that came with the car. But now I opened it out of curiosity. And what I saw made my stomach turn. She hadn't been going downtown. Not even close. The log showed her heading west, toward the lake, toward the Beacon Point area. The same hotel from the keycard. I didn't say anything right away. I needed more. I started tracking her weekend movements. If she said she was heading to the office, I checked the map later. Sometimes it lined up. Sometimes it didn't. A few times, the GPS showed long stops in residential neighborhoods that didn't match anyone we knew. One Sunday, she told me she was grabbing brunch with a client, but the car had parked for 2 hours outside a boutique hotel that didn't even serve brunch. I ***ed everything. Every route. Every timestamp. Every inconsistency. And suddenly, I remembered something from a few months back. I had brushed it off at the time. She'd come home late, and I'd asked if she wanted dinner. She said no, that she already ate at the office. But her phone had pinged a location 2 miles away. At the time, I thought maybe the GPS was off. Maybe she'd just forgotten to mention a stop. Now, I saw it differently. And with that shift, more memories started clicking into place. Like the time I noticed her wearing a new necklace, a simple gold bar. I asked where it came from. She paused, then said it was just a little gift from the team for hitting a campaign milestone. I believed her, but I never saw the same necklace on any of her coworkers, even when we went out together. And once, I heard Liam mention a local jeweler he liked, a boutique that specialized in those kinds of custom pieces. I didn't think much of it then. Now, I thought about it a lot. And then there was her language. Emily used to say we and mean us. We should try that place next weekend. We should book a trip. We haven't been out in a while. But lately her we had started sounding disconnected. She'd say things like, we've been talking about going to the new gallery, and I'd ask who we was, and she'd just smile and say, oh, just people at work. One time, she said, we're doing a staycation next month. Then quickly corrected herself and said, sorry, the team is doing a staycation raffle. It's a marketing gimmick. It was subtle, always subtle, but it added up. I kept collecting the little things, photos, receipts. One day, while vacuuming, I found a napkin crumpled at the bottom of her car door. Beacon Point Hotel printed on the corner, lipstick smudge faint on the fold. I took a picture, then put it back exactly where I found it. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. But I wasn't living in the dark anymore either. It was a Thursday night when she told me she'd be going out for a friend's bachelorette party. She mentioned it casually, too casually. Said it over dinner like she was talking about laundry. She picked at her salad, barely looking at me, her eyes flicking to her phone as she said it. Oh, by the way, I might be out late tomorrow. Tessa's bachelorette thing. Totally forgot it was this weekend. I blinked. Tessa? You mean the Tessa that moved to Denver last year? She nodded, her fork paused midair. Yeah, she's back in town for the weekend. Sort of a last-minute thing. You know how she is. It didn't make sense, but I didn't press it. Not then. The lies had gotten better, tighter, more practiced. Every time I tried to poke holes in them, she patched them faster than I could finish my sentence. And somehow, she always made me feel like the paranoid one. But something about this lie felt different, like it had an expiration date. Friday evening, she got dressed in the bedroom while I sat on the edge of the bed, pretending to read emails. She wore a black dress I'd never seen before. Tight, short, flattering. Paired with heels she once said hurt too much to bother with. Her makeup was heavier than usual, more deliberate. Her hair curled. Perfume, not one of the usual samples this time. Something richer, deeper. You look wow, I said, mostly to test the waters. She gave me a quick smile, not even pausing to acknowledge the compliment. It's just one night. I'll probably be home late. Then she was gone. I waited exactly 1 hour and 22 minutes. That's when it came in. A message from a number I didn't recognize. Just 6 words and a file attachment. You need to see this. Now. First, I didn't move. I stared at the message, heart thudding against my ribs. Every warning bell in my body screaming. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen like it might bite me. Then I opened the file. It was a video. Shaky. Handheld. Probably filmed with a phone from across the street. The screen lit up with a wide *T of an outdoor patio, warm lights, cozy ambience, and a familiar riverside restaurant we used to go to on anniversaries. Couples chatted over wine glasses. Waiters weaved between tables. And then I saw them, Emily and Liam, sitting side by side at a small round table near the railing. Wine between them, hands casually too close. The camera zoomed slightly, just enough to see Emily laughing, her head tilted, eyes locked on him like the rest of the world didn't exist. Then her hand rested on his knee under the table. Subtle, like a reflex, like something she'd done 100 times. Liam leaned in. She leaned in. And then they kissed. Not a peck. Not something quick and ambiguous. A real kiss. Unapologetic. Long, slow. Familiar. One that said everything words hadn't. I felt the blood drain from my face. I couldn't move. In the video, they broke apart and stood. She adjusted her dress slightly, smiled, and slipped her hand into the crook of his arm. They walked toward the side entrance of the restaurant. Not the main one, and a few seconds later, the camera cut to them getting into his car. He opened the door for her. She got in without hesitation. Then the screen went black. I sat there frozen, phone gripped in my hand like it might explode. My chest felt hollow and full at the same time. Rage, disbelief, pain, all rising at once like a tidal wave with nowhere to go. I didn't know who sent the video. There was no name, no follow-up message, no context. But none of that mattered. I didn't need explanations anymore. The truth wasn't hiding. It was staring straight at me in 1080p, full volume. She wasn't with Tessa. There was no bachelorette party. She was with him. And not for the first time if their body language meant anything. I put the phone down, slowly, and just sat there. Couldn't cry, couldn't scream, couldn't even think. It was like my body had short-circuited, overloaded by finally seeing what I'd been afraid to admit for weeks, maybe months. All I could do was wait. At 1:27 a.m., I heard the front door open. Keys jangled. Heels clicked softly on the hardwood. I didn't get up. I stayed in the dark, pretending to be asleep on the couch, even as the scent of her perfume drifted into the room. I could hear her walking lightly, trying not to wake me. The gentle shuffle of her shoes coming off, the water running faintly in the downstairs bathroom, the clink of glass as she poured herself a drink from the cabinet. I waited. She came into the living room a minute later and stood silently in the doorway, eyes adjusting to the dark. I could feel her watching me, trying to read if I was awake. She lingered, then turned and padded up the stairs to our bedroom like everything was fine. Like she hadn't spent the night with another man. I stayed on the couch until morning. Didn't sleep. Didn't move. Just stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me and tried to breathe. When I finally did stand up, I walked into the kitchen and found her purse sitting on the counter. She'd left it half-zipped, like always. Inside was a lipstick, a receipt from a parking garage downtown, a hotel-branded matchbox, and a mini bottle of the same wine they'd been drinking in the video, unopened. It was almost insulting, how sloppy it all was, like she didn't even care to hide it anymore. Or maybe she thought I'd never look. Around 7 a.m., she came downstairs in leggings and a hoodie, hair tied back, face clean of makeup. She poured herself coffee, leaned against the counter, and gave me a smile I'd seen 1,000 times before. "So last night was wild," she said. "I forgot how crazy those girls get when there's champagne involved." I didn't respond. I just stared at her. She laughed awkwardly. "What?" "Nothing." I just shook my head. She sipped her coffee like it was any other morning. No tension, no fear, no guilt. And that somehow hurt the most. Emily moved through the kitchen like she hadn't just detonated our life with one night. She poured her coffee, yawned, and started humming something soft and tuneless, like the kind of background melody you'd hear in a commercial for almond milk or yoga retreats. I watched her butter a slice of toast like nothing had happened. No tension in her shoulders. No hesitation in her steps. She didn't check to see if I was upset. She didn't need to. She already had the lie prepared and delivered before I even opened my mouth. She'd built an entire alternate version of last night and handed it to me gift-wrapped over breakfast. All I had to do was nod along like the idiot husband. But I didn't. I didn't say a word. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the little bubble of milk swirling in my untouched coffee. Watching her pretend was like watching a movie I'd seen too many times. The acting got worse with every rewatch. The silence didn't bother her. That's how I knew things had shifted. Because for the first time in weeks, maybe longer, I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel the urge to fight for answers or try to pull her back. The weight I'd been carrying, the gnawing suspicion, the anxiety, the mental gymnastics, all of it suddenly dissolved. Not because things were okay. Because I finally understood they weren't going to be. Something in me had snapped. Quietly, cleanly, like a string pulled too tight for too long, breaking without warning. And when it broke, it didn't make noise. It didn't need to. It left behind something sharper. Focus. While she went on about how crazy Michelle got on tequila, and how someone knocked over a whole table of sliders, I sat there and nodded like a man who still cared. But I wasn't listening. I was recording. Everything she said, every timestamp, every name. I was building a map in my head. Because if she was going to lie this well, this confidently, then I needed to stop asking questions and start gathering evidence. That day, I began keeping records. Not just of locations or receipts. Of language. How often she used we, but never meant us. How Liam's name began showing up more often, subtly peppered into anecdotes. Liam's team had this wild idea. Or, Liam said the client's obsessed with our pitch. Harmless at first glance. But I started noticing that we often included him now. Even if she didn't say it outright. I watched the way her phone lived in her hand, always tilted slightly away from me. I started noting the exact times she left the house and the reasons she gave. I checked the GPS app after each one. And it kept confirming what I already knew. She was lying as easily as breathing. There was a particular day, a Thursday, when she said she'd be at a vendor's showroom from 3 to 6 p.m. She kissed my cheek, grabbed her tablet, and said she might be late grabbing dinner. I watched from the upstairs window as she got into her car. At 5:12 p.m., her car pinged outside Beacon Point again. By 5:47, it had moved 3 blocks to a wine bar. At 6:29, it was back in the hotel lot. She came home after 8, chipper, holding a takeout bag with a sandwich and a napkin that read, Charlotte's. Local, organic, honest. It was clean. Too clean. She set it on the counter and told me it was a slow day at the showroom, and the vendor gave her free samples of soaps, none of which she showed me. She didn't ask how my day was. She hadn't in a while. That weekend, I bought a flash drive. I backed up every single GPS record I could access, along with **TS of our text exchanges, where she always answered just vaguely enough to avoid lying outright. I started organizing everything into folders labeled by date. I even printed some of them, made physical copies like this was a courtroom trial, because in a way it was. I just hadn't filed the charges yet. I dug into our joint account statements, looking for patterns. They were there, subtle but consistent. Mid-afternoon charges at cafes far from her office. A few rideshare receipts that didn't align with her claimed locations. And once, a Venmo payment to someone listed only as L, with a note that said room. She claimed it was a joke. I didn't argue. I copied the **T and added it to the folder. Even the smartwatch we'd gifted each other the previous Christmas, the one she claimed never worked right, gave me something. When synced to her phone, it logged her walking routes, heart rate spikes, sleep times. She never bothered disabling that. One Sunday, she left the house claiming she was going to a farmer's market. The watch showed a full 42 minutes spent stationary at the Beacon Point address, and a resting heart rate that spiked and dropped sharply around the 15-minute mark. You don't need to be a scientist to read that data. And still, she smiled like nothing had changed. She made dinner, folded laundry, scrolled Instagram while pretending not to glance at me from across the couch. She posted a photo of the two of us from last fall. Pumpkin patch, warm filters, captioned grateful for this one, and tagged me like the whole thing wasn't a slow-motion car crash behind the scenes. The irony made me nauseous. At work, I became a ghost. Not visibly, not to others, but inside. I started working later, not because I had to, but because I needed time to breathe. I couldn't go home and pretend. Couldn't sit across from her at dinner while she spun stories about coworkers she never invited over, projects she never showed me, inside jokes I was no longer part of. I wasn't in the loop anymore. I wasn't in anything anymore. We used to share Spotify playlists. Now her recently played was a collection of indie acoustic songs and moody R&B tracks I didn't recognize. Once, I saw her get a message notification from someone saved in her phone as LC. She turned the screen face down so fast it nearly slid off the table. I didn't ask who LC was. I just took a mental note and added it to my growing log. But even as I gathered proof, I didn't confront her. That was the hard part. I wanted to. God, I wanted to scream it all at her, to throw the videos, the **TS, the data in her face and watch her excuses crumble. But I didn't, because this wasn't about confrontation anymore. This was about control. Not of her, of myself, of my exit. I didn't want an apology. I didn't want to hear her cry and say she'd been confused, or that Liam just listened in a way I didn't. I'd read enough of those stories online to know how the script goes. How she'd say she didn't mean to fall. How she thought we were drifting. How she never wanted to hurt me. But none of that would undo what she'd done. So I stayed silent. But I didn't stay still. I began meeting with an attorney in secret. Told him everything. He asked if I had proof. I handed him the flash drive. He didn't say anything for a while. Just nodded slowly and said, "This makes things clean." Clean was all I wanted. Back at home, Emily asked if I wanted to go on a hike that weekend. Said it'd be good to get off the grid for a while. I nodded and said, "Sure." She smiled, relieved. She probably thought I was softening again, that the guilt was wearing off. But it wasn't guilt I was feeling. It was clarity. The truth wasn't something I had to search for anymore. I was already living in it. It was her idea. The weekend trip. She pitched it like it was a gift, a bandage over a bullet wound. "Let's get away," she said one night, curled up next to me on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder like nothing had shifted between us. Just you and me, somewhere quiet. No distractions. No work. Just us. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch until she pulled back slightly, searching my face. I feel like we've been off, she added gently. I want to fix that. I miss us. It was probably the first honest thing she'd said in weeks, just not in the way she thought. Because she was right. We had been off. Only I wasn't trying to fix it anymore. I was trying to see how far it had already broken. So I nodded. Yeah, that sounds good. She smiled, that soft, relieved kind that's supposed to mean something. And maybe once it would've. But now, I couldn't tell the difference between real emotion and calculated performance. She picked the cabin. Said she found it on a quiet rental site a coworker recommended. Private lake. No cell service. Rustic but modern. We can reset, she said. Just the two of us. No one else. The irony wasn't lost on me. We drove out Friday afternoon. I let her control the playlist. She sang softly to some indie band she said she used to listen to in college. I watched the road. The further we got from the city, the more she relaxed. She talked about how nice it would be to unplug, to take photos, just for ourselves for once. To make memories that didn't need to be shared. When we arrived, the cabin looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. Modern cedar wood, a wide porch, big windows overlooking the water. A canoe sat by the dock. Firewood stacked neatly beside the door. Someone had clearly put thought into curating the place. Inside, everything was styled for comfort. Cozy throws, artfully mismatched mugs, shelves with local books. She immediately walked to the corner by the window and took a photo of the view. Then another of her hand wrapped around a cup of coffee, even though the coffee was still in the bag, unopened. That night, she posted a carousel of Instagram stories. A sunset boomerang from the porch, her feet in wool socks near the fireplace. A sh*T of our dinner plates arranged perfectly on the rustic dining table. I wasn't in any of them. I didn't mind. I wasn't here to be seen. I was here to see what she'd do with the silence. Around 9 p.m., she said she wanted to take a walk by the lake. It's so peaceful out there, she whispered, pulling on her coat and gloves. I just want to sit near the water, clear my head. I nodded and handed her a flashlight from the cabin's drawer. You sure you'll be okay? I asked. She smiled. I'll be right back. Promise. The second she walked out the door, I pulled out my phone. I already had the car's GPS app open. I refreshed the location feed and waited. She hadn't taken the flashlight. She'd taken the car. 10 minutes later, the car pinged on the highway. I sat in the dark, alone in the middle of nowhere, staring at a blinking red dot heading south, toward Beacon Point. I didn't follow. I already knew where it ended. I paced the cabin, looked at her half-zipped bag, then at the phone charger she'd left on the nightstand. Her journal was still there too, closed and used. The reset she pitched so tenderly had nothing to do with us. It was about managing optics, maintaining the illusion. She returned an hour and 37 minutes later. Hair windblown, cheeks flushed, smelling faintly of wine and something expensive I didn't recognize. Not one of her samples. When she stepped inside, she rubbed her gloved hands together like a child coming in from sledding. Freezing out there, she laughed. I found a little trail that loops around the water. You'd love it. I gave a small smile and nodded. I'll try it tomorrow. She stepped into the bathroom to shower, humming again. I looked at my phone. The GPS app had saved everything. Down to the minute. She had parked outside the same hotel she claimed was just a client account. Same place Liam had picked up the keycard from the rooftop weeks ago. The data didn't lie. Neither did the route map. I took *TS and emailed them to myself immediately, then deleted all traces from the phone. I was getting better at this. The next morning, she woke early, energetic, light. She made pancakes. Told me we should take some couple photos by the dock before we left. We barely have any good ones lately, she said, brushing her hair in the mirror. Let's fix that. She posed us both with the lake in the background. Filtered the image to make the colors warmer. But when she posted, it was just a photo of her holding coffee. Caption: needed this reset. #reconnect. That afternoon, As we packed, she asked if I wanted to stop by a vineyard on the way back. Make the weekend last a little longer, she said. I told her I had some work to catch up on. Truth was, I just didn't want to pretend anymore. When we got home that evening, she unpacked fast, like she wanted to erase the evidence of the trip before the mood faded. She started laundry, wiped down the counters, turned on music. Light jazz, upbeat, background noise. I went into the bedroom and checked her purse. She'd left her wallet on the dresser, open. Inside, folded in the cash pocket, was a receipt from the hotel. Beacon Point Hotel, Restaurant. Dinner for 2. Ordered. Wine, dessert for 2, late-night charcuterie board. Time, 10:18 p.m. Right when she said she was sitting by the lake. I took a photo, added it to the growing collection. Then I returned everything to its exact place and went to the kitchen. She was humming again, stirring something on the stove. She looked up and smiled when I walked in. This trip was good, she said. I feel like we're better, don't you? I stared at her for a beat too long, then smiled back. Yeah, I said. Much better. She kissed my cheek and went back to cooking. Later that night, she uploaded a final story. A collage of filtered photos. Lake mist, mugs, the glow of firelight, a new bracelet she wore in a selfie. I recognized it immediately. Liam had posted a boutique story weeks earlier, a close-up of a jewelry case, the same bracelet centered in the *T. I saved it. I checked the metadata. Same boutique, same date, different buyer. That bracelet wasn't part of our life. It was a souvenir from hers, the one she shared with someone else. Back home, she acted like the trip had healed us. But I saw it clearly now, her life was no longer built around us. Liam's presence was everywhere. In her photos, her jewelry, even her language. I kept archiving proof, quietly building my exit. The truth wasn't hidden. It had simply become routine. Her world had shifted, and I wasn't part of it anymore. I filed for divorce the next morning. Everything was ready, evidence, documents, accounts closed. When she found the papers, the cycle began. Shock, tears, bargaining. But for me, it was over. No anger left, just silence. Even when she joked about me at dinner weeks later, I just stood and walked away. I wasn't her husband anymore. I wasn't part of her story, and I never would be again.